Okay, we will call this meeting to order for November the 15th. Are there any additions or deletions to the agenda?
Yes, Mayor Barkley, just an adjustment to the agenda. As you can see on the agenda, the initial delegation associated engineering was scheduled to be first. They're actually later on the agenda at 4 o'clock.
Okay.
So we'll ask to approve the agenda as amended, please.
Okay, thank you. Could I please have somebody approve the agenda as amended?
I so move, Mayor Barkley.
Thank you, Councillor Harrison. All in favor? Okay, so first up on our agenda then will be 3.2 Iris Reimer as a delegation. Is Iris here? Apparently not.
Your delegation is here. We just have to have a couple people. There's some empty chairs. There's a chair for
Okay, so we have Iris Reimer, Daryl Hillman, and Jeffrey Midland as the first delegation. You're going to have 10 minutes to present, and there is no open mic session. So we will let you present, and we will move on from there. Thank you.
Can we take another chair? Are we allowed to do that? Sorry, I saw we were second on the agenda. So that switched.
Actually, Mr. Carrot, please sit down. If you have any documents to pass out, you can give them to Kara Cochran.
These ones here?
It's the same.
These go with these?
Yeah.
Okay,
There's
sorry.
three.
Okay, so if there's any documentation, I will take some.
No, we're going to talk about these ones, so
Okay.
we're not giving out all that documentation right now.
Here's Eric.
This one for her. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Hello. Good afternoon, Mayor, Town Council, and fellow Innisfailians. I am convinced that each and every one of you cares about this town and its citizens, or you wouldn't be here today. We are here to talk about concerns with the town's restriction exemption program or the implementation of vaccine passports. Let me read a few quotes to you. September 9th, I wrote an email to Innisfail's current mayor and the two mayoral candidates with concerns about vaccination passports being mandated in Alberta. We are a free and democratic society. We need to continue to allow people to make their own choices for their bodies. Implementation of a vaccine passport would create even more division in our society. September 15th, I sent another email asking, will you or will you not follow the path of other Edmonton area mayors and demand a vaccine passport system for Innisfail? September 15th, Jean Barclay wrote a response, will not. From Mountain View today, October 2nd, 2021, peace and healthy community. Dunham wants to be part of a movement on the new council that will turn around Innisfail's current divisiveness and polarization to a place where the community is whole again. That's first and foremost, a healthy community. And if we can come back together, then we can start attracting more businesses. And I think that is something Innisfail desperately needs, said Dunham. Without having a healthy community, though, we are not going to be able to do that, and the town is going to suffer in the long term. But how does one heal the community wounds from the past year and a half? Dunham believes it starts and comes from a place of humility and openness. We need to put our egos and our own personal views aside and look to the community in a way that we engage with them, listen to them, and honor what being part of a community in the town really means, he said. If you reach out to the community without a personal agenda, people will come together, come forward, and they will be more open to trying to work with you to do things moving forward. Mountain View today, October 14th. I want to say something about the divisiveness I've noticed in Innisfail. That is really kind of what drew me in, figuring out how to move forward in a positive way, said Ms. Saros. From the Albertan, October 26, 2021, Barclays said the overwhelming vote for change was a clear message from a local electorate, weary of the deep division and wanting to move decisively forward with a positive vision for the community. She added the community can now begin its healing process, but it will take everyone to be a part of it. We can have different options. We can have different opinions, but let's face it, a lot of the division is mostly around COVID, and that is not disappearing anytime soon, said Barclay. We have to find a way to work together, and hopefully people will want to be part of the solution. Said Wing, it was overwhelming. They voted in support of progressive, of community, of people working in collaboration, people working together. From Mountain View today, October 26, 2021. Yes, we have gone through a lot, Jean Barclay said. It's not just up to 7 council members to help the community heal. It's up to every person to help the community heal. I completely agree with all your comments. There needs to be healing and peacemaking. And it's up to all of us. I was extremely disappointed this past week while watching the Monday, November 8th council meeting, especially surrounding the discussion on the men's rec hockey teams. I know you're all there, so I will not reference your names in these snippets from the discussion. CAO, they are not willing to comply to expectations, require acknowledgement of compliance. Options, cancel bookings with league while they work on compliance. Work with the 4 teams that have acknowledged compliance or ensure compliance at the door like other municipalities are doing. Counselor, only willing to work with the 4 teams willing to comply. Assumed only 4 groups want wellness in their lives, get exercise, be productive, be healthy in their lives. Counselor, agreed to work with the 4 teams, question what you do with communicating with the other 2. Have a communication plan. Maybe they're close to coming on side. Counselor, question if there had been communication with single individual or communication with the 4 teams willing to comply. CAO have only reached out to the main contact. We'll discuss with the organizer. Trying to apply rules, not our rules, very confusing rules. Ministerial order, hate to see the whole facility shut down, subject to fines or both. No one happy with the rules, but what we have to do to maintain operation of the facility. Other option, don't do the REP program and it removes all adult programs. Doing best we can to work with restrictions imposed on us. Counselor, go back to league and have the discussion, work with the players that have made the effort to concur. Stress, these are not our rules, we are enforcing them. I took an oath of office to diligently serve and obey the law. Ministerial order is law. It comes down from the minister. A lot of confusion. Mayor, hate to see a league shut down because of some people who don't want to comply. Make sure we do what we can so the league continues. Hopefully others catch on or they won't. So you ask me, why was I disappointed? Compliance was used almost 20 times within the 10-minute discussion. However, not a single mention of how much of this was true, nor finding out the reasons and concerns of 2 teams and individual players had to not disclose their personal and confidential health information. There was no discussion on how to dialogue, understand, and work together was even mentioned.
If I may interject. Hi, everyone. I'm Jeffrey Midland and have been defaulted as the primary contact for scheduling of the Innisfail Men's Rec Hockey League and inadvertently thrust into REP/vaccine passport concerns. A letter from Trish Sarin, Kirsty Anderson, and Megan Jenkins to the men's group was emailed to the former contact of league on October 6th. It stated that organizers must screen all attendees for proof of vaccination negative privately paid test result, or an original medical exemption letter, as well as ID. The Personal Information Protection Act, under consent required, states an organization shall not, as a condition of supplying a product or service, require an individual to consent to the collection, use, or disclosure of personal information about an individual beyond what is necessary to provide the product or service. I reminded the other teams this fact. They concurred. The former league contact resigned, and subsequently, I am now responsible for collecting money to pay for these teams to pay for the ice time. On November 4th, after establishing myself as the new contact for the scheduling and payment, the letter was sent again from Christie. I replied with many points about the infringement of Alberta Human Rights Protection Act. This email made it to Todd Becker, who replied on Sunday, and we had further communication Monday regarding the ministerial orders. Not knowing Tom had emailed me Sunday, I sent an email to the councillors, Mayor and Todd, with my own belief, ignorant or otherwise, that a vaccine passport system had yet to be formally applied to all facilities. Our user group got an email, but I do not recall anything in the newspaper. However, ignorance is not an excuse. One council member replied to my email with a response stating it would be forwarded to Todd. Although Todd was included, I would like to remind council that Todd Becker is your employee. This email generated discussion about discriminating an adult user group from the arena. Last Monday, November 8th, where the rec league was painted as mostly compliant, Todd told council and everyone else present, thank you, Johnny Bachusky, for informing me of this, that 4 teams had complied with the requirements and questioned how the remaining 2 should be dealt with. This is a lie. I know as of Wednesday that none of those teams, 5 of those teams had not sent anything. That was 2 days after council meeting. And as of Friday, apparently only 2 teams had contacted Christie. I've reminded them again to touch base. Many user groups are concerned about the infringements of human rights ordered by Dr. Hinshaw under the Public Health Act with respect to a passport system. Young athletes do not get to display their skills in front of family and friends, and traveling teams will not spend money in local establishments to eat before they travel home without showing a passport to declare their privilege, simultaneously discriminating against those for freedom of choice. I'm trying to keep this quick, but to touch on Chief Medical Officer's Health Order 44/2021, Dr. Hinshaw claims authority for the Public Health Act to prohibit people from attending any location for a period if she is under the opinion that these steps will lessen the public health emergency. As of yesterday, the Central Zone had 1,008 active cases out of approximately 240,000 people. Active in Alberta was 5,745. 554 of those in hospital. I did not check to see how many were in ICU. Contract tracing was negated long ago due to cost. I'm not sure. How many cases have come out of the recreational facilities in Innisfail? I'm sure it would be newsworthy if they sent a custodian down here to swab the arena, the pool, the library to check to see if this is truly a hotspot for contamination. This ministerial order is in direct contrast to the human rights that states within its first paragraph, every law of Alberta is operative to the extent that it authorizes or requires the doing of anything prohibited by this act, being the Human Rights Act. For anyone not familiar with that act, Section 4 talks about discrimination of any kind as it pertains to denying goods, services, accommodation, or facilities in Alberta. The Emergency Management Act also reinforces the Alberta human rights shall always be enforced under 5.1b. This same health order declares that outside activities are okay. So let's crack a door in the arena and let that air flow. A passport system discriminates against access to a facility that rarely sees a third capacity. The rec league starts at 9 o'clock at night or later, and the arena is a ghost town except for this user group. We pay over $14,000 for the use of this facility, and this same user group has been coerced into intruding on private medical history of its participants, a user group whose primary contact for scheduling is concerned with the looming passport system dividing Albertans ages 12 and up. Sick people look sick and should stay home. Keep yourself safe and be considerate individuals that may be susceptible to this virus ravaging the planet. An REP or vaccine program does not solve this problem.
Okay, thank you. So that 10 minutes is up for the first delegation.
I'm sorry, we have a few more things to present. We were told that that would be all right.
By whom?
Well, that's Daryl's on now.
But is he part, are you part of the second delegation too, Daryl?
Pardon?
Are you part of the second delegation as well?
I'm
Because-
not sure which delegation I'm,
Oh, I don't know, because you were in Glenn's delegation.
So,
Okay.
can you help me understand how delegations work? Because I've seen some delegations where they're 25, 30 minutes and there's questions afterwards. So I'm trying to understand how come this delegation today, which you can tell by the number of people here, how many people are on Zoom right now? I'm curious about that. This is a big part and you're only giving 10 minutes.
Well, as it said right in the information, the sheet that
wasn't
you
on the
use,
information sheet that I had for this delegation.
it's right in front of me. It says delegations are limited to a maximum of 10 minutes.
So some delegations you allow 25, 45
So,
minutes. How does that
Well,
work?
let's respond to the first part of your presentation. Number one, as I've told you, Iris, time and time again, we do not implement, we are not the purveyor. We don't create public health policy at the municipal government level. That's the government of Alberta that
This
does
is the
that.
part we're actually dealing with, right?
And so the ministerial orders are there. They are the law, and we're going to follow the law. And we, of all facilities in central Alberta, are probably the loosest of any of them. We know that Olds, Blackfalds, and Panoka and Drayton Valley have all implemented the REP program now for their facilities. We are at 1/3 capacity, so people are welcome to come and watch their kids play. But what we can't do is allow adult programming without the REP program. So we cannot change that.
Okay. Can we,
I can clarify this, Mayor, if you will.
No, no, you're the second delegation. So
I could clarify where the second delegation comes from if you could accept somebody speaking.
well, who's going to speak next?
Okay, so I'm sorry, we still have Daryl's part of our delegation. And I still had a little tiny bit more that I just wanted as a response to your question there.
Okay,
So
well,
if we can
we've
have,
got a very
the
busy
part-
agenda in front of us,
I
but let's keep
understand that.
going.
okay, so if we can have
It's
the
not
next
going
10
to change anything.
minutes.
Are we good to go? Does this group want copies of what I'm about to say? No? Okay. Good afternoon, Mayor Barclay, members of council. Let me congratulate you on your recent election to Town of Innisfail Council. My name is Daryl Hillman. I follow the prior presentations with overarching view of the issues being addressed regarding the operation of our town facilities where proof of vaccination allows entrance to the public facility and the unvaccinated or members of the control group are turned away. There is serious smoldering sentiment among the residents of the town of Innisfail, as evidenced by this stack of written complaints. Thank you. That the current rules as implemented by the town constitute segregation, prejudice, and discrimination. The word smoldering reminds me of a time when I was younger on the farm and we had a ground fire in a boggy area. The ground was extremely hot and there was little smoke and vaporizing, but no flames. That was until we opened up the surface in an attempt to douse the smoldering peat moss and it burst into flames as soon as the oxygen was available. Then the fear was that the fire would spread, become a prairie fire, and put our farmstead and possibly our neighbors' farms at risk. Ladies and gentlemen, the current smoldering sentiment in the town of Innisfail regarding the shunning of unvaccinated residents from town facilities is being formally uncovered and today is open up for review by town council. It is our understanding that if the town chooses not to implement restrictions exemption program, these facilities may be operated under the prior rules that would not discriminate against unvaccinated persons, but rather fall back to prior measures such as capacity and distancing to be implemented. Many residents of many Innisfail residents, some members of council have expressed there is a need for bringing the people of Innisfail together, not creating division and segregation. Providing the same rights to both vaccinated and unvaccinated will go a long way to heal the feelings of division felt by both groups. Before this smoldering sentiment bursts into flames, let alone escalates into a prairie fire, we respectfully ask council to instruct administration to drop the current vaccine passport system and adopt the fallback rules and provisions that some other municipalities have opted for. Thank you.
I just had a few closing remarks. I was asked the other day how I would suggest we bring healing to this town. Have I got an idea for you? An inclusive roundtable discussion group. My goals for roundtable discussion would be to make a safe space, or just a space, but keep it safe, where information, questions, and concerns regarding the REP program vaccine passports would be shared. We could also be creative and see if there are other possible solutions which no one has thought of yet. Imagine Innisfail having an ingenious idea and other towns following us. We could invite user groups, individual citizens, ones who actually step foot in our public facilities, council members, and team players. I've already extended an invite to our MLA, Devin Dreeshen. He can hear our concerns, questions, and hopefully clarify the confusing rules and share reasons behind the REP vaccine passport program, and perhaps take our good ideas to his people. I think in the spirit of being transparent, inclusive, open, and humble, a roundtable discussion where all ideas and concerns are considered and weighed on, having the goal to understand and facilitate coexistence, that this would be a step in the right direction. And I have two questions I'm hoping town council can answer for us. Number one, will you impose the restricted exemptions program vaccine passports in our town, whether it will be in public facilities or to individual businesses? Number two, our Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, recently promised $1 billion to help provinces pay for vaccine passports. How much money has the province of Alberta promised to its municipalities for implementing the vaccine passport or the REP program in their towns? On October 12th, 2021, we had a delegation present concerns for the REP vaccine passports to the previous town council. We gave notice of liability to the members. Jean Barclay, Don Harrison, and Gavin Bates received their notices at this time. However, we have revised copies for you. Can I present these to them, or you would like to give? So this is for Jean Barclay, Gavin Bates, and Don Harrison, revised copies of the notice of liabilities. Today, we're letting the new councillors know that you are on notice and you will be held liable for the decisions you make. Dale Dunham, Cindy Maceros, Janice Wing, and Jason Highstead. And Todd Becker, as Chief Administrator of the town of Innisfail, you too are being served notice of liability. And it's short, so I'll read it out loud for all to hear. Todd Becker, this is your official and personal notice of liability. According to top constitutional lawyer Rocco Gagliardi, both government and private businesses cannot impose mandatory vaccinations. I have the right to life, liberty, and security of the person, including the right to access services without discrimination or hardship. Your unlawful actions are in direct violation of the Canadian Constitution, the Coronation Oath, the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, Bill of Rights, the Canadian Human Rights Act, and the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. There are no provisions in any orders of any health minister, doctor, or provincial legislation that can, nor pretend that any measures can override charter or other pre-charter constitutional rights. Even if the federal government had invoked the Federal Emergencies Act, which it is not, the Act states, and whereas the governor and council in taking such special temporary measures would be subject to the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms and the Canadian Bill of Rights, it must have regard to the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, particularly with respect to those fundamental rights that are not to be limited and abridged, even in a national emergency. Vaccination is voluntary in Canada. Even if the government attempts to mandate it, there is no law, nor can there be, as it's a violation of human rights and international agreements. Businesses are infringing on human rights and putting themselves personally at risk of a civil lawsuit for damages and potential imprisonment by attempting to impose any vaccine, including the COVID-19 experimental injections, on patrons in exchange for services. The Canadian Human Rights Act, discriminatory practices, denial of goods, service, facility, or accommodation. It is a discriminatory practice in the provision of goods, services, facilities, or accommodation customarily available to the general public. A, to deny or to deny access to any such good, service, facility, or accommodation to any individual, or to differentiate adversely in relation to any individual on a prohibited ground of discrimination. Be advised that businesses, whether private, public, or membership-based, are operating under a business license, which is an open invitation to the public. Denying service would be violating the terms of that business license. The no shirt, no shoes argument does not apply in this instance, as it's not comparable to enforcing compliance to a vaccine, which is a medical intervention. You are unlawfully practicing medicine by facilitating, enforcing, incentivizing, and using coercion to insist patrons submit to any vaccine, including the experimental gene therapy injections for COVID-19, commonly referred to as vaccines. Canadian law has long recognized that individuals have the right to control what happens to their bodies. The citizens of Canada are protected under
Excuse me,
medical
Iris,
and
how much
legal, I'm
more?
just about done. Legal ethics of express informed consent are entitled to the full protections under guaranteed under the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms, Universal Declaration on Bioethics and Human Rights, Nuremberg Code, the Helsinki Declaration. Citizens are under no moral or legal obligation to comply with any orders to subject themselves to an experimental treatment. Neither you, your staff, or contracted security have been directly deputized by the government to enforce their unlawful orders. The government is using threats of fines or to revoke business liquor licenses to force business owners to comply. You're participating in enforcing the unlawful acts of the government makes you complicit and therefore personally liable. The Nuremberg trials are evidence that I was just following orders was not acceptable defense and will not exonerate you from responsibility. Section 52 of the Constitution Act 1982 clearly states that any law that is inconsistent with the Constitution is no force in effect. Therefore, any measures taken by you to compel compliance by means of refusal of service, instigating confrontation, threats to remove me, harassment, and attempt to demean, humiliate, or coerce revoking membership may be met with personal human rights complaint, civil litigation, and or potential criminal charges against you. It is recommended that you advise government officials that you will not be forced to comply with orders that are in blatant violation of individual guaranteed human rights, the Constitution, the Criminal Code, and international agreements, as this opens you up to not only personal civil litigation, but also damages. I therefore demand you cease and desist and provide me with service. You're officially on notice. And there are 3 here from each one of my members of my delegation. So thank you. Did you have any questions for
Does
us?
council have any questions or any comments? Do we want to follow the ministerial orders or not, or?
Are you able to answer those 2 questions I had for council?
I can certainly answer myself, just my opinion. I will
So-
continue to follow the ministerial orders of the government of Alberta, and I'm not going to break the law. And our facilities are running at 1/3 capacity, with the exception of adult programming.
Okay, but I don't think it's a requirement of adult program.
Well, that's fine. And if you want to take this up and have it changed, you should be going to the Alberta government. But does
So
anybody else?
you're saying that you're not open to roundtable discussions? Is
So
that
does
what you're
anybody
saying?
else have anything to say? Councillor Harrison?
Thank you, Mayor Barkley, and thank you to Iris and Daryl and Jeffrey. Thank you very much for coming in and presenting today. Very informative. Our first goal as council when we got elected, peel back the onion, and we're here to protect the safety, the welfare of our citizens and our community. And with that, COVID I agree. This community has been torn apart. And we need to do something to try and bring it back together. I think it's unfair that you ask us for answers to these questions today, because this is the first. We were only asked these questions 2 minutes ago. I would suggest that you give us some time to deliberate these 2. One is, if I've got it right, is how will we implement the REP in Innisfail other than in public facilities or whatever? And the second one being, are we obtaining money from the government or federal or provincial to help us with that? I think it's more than fair that we have an opportunity as a council to be able to to debate these questions, to think through them. Like I say, we've only been here a minute since you've asked them. So I would ask that. I see Black Falls just went back to their REP in their arena.
Sorry, can I just interject? Sorry, Don Harrison, Councillor Harrison. You and I had a conversation after my previous delegation before the election, and we had talked about a roundtable discussion. So that was also part of my presentation. And you had said at that time to my daughter, myself, that you would definitely, if I had brought up the roundtable discussion, that you would definitely bring that before council. So that is one of the questions I also had. Yes, I had two more, but my main part was, can we at least be inclusive and include people who are using the facilities, open it up to discussion? And that's what a number of you had said before election. That was a promise, to have an openness. And then there wasn't, even last week, the discussion about the men's hockey team. There wasn't an openness to try to find out what was really going on. And then I find out that's not really the truth of what happened. So a roundtable discussion is very important, to bring in other people, to bring in the town and bring in the discussion. But yes, you're right. And I'm sorry to throw on these two questions. So I
Okay.
apologize for that.
Yeah.
But
And that's fine. And yes, Delegate Reimer, you're absolutely right. We did have a discussion and it was brought to council. And at that time, we all agreed that we were going to follow the law, and there wasn't much merit in going forth with the roundtable. Now, I would suggest that you table it again as one of your questions, and we
Okay.
can certainly debate it now that we've had a presentation. But please, give us some time to think through this thing here, right? That's all we ask.
No more years? It's pretty straightforward.
So current REP is extinguished, is done on December 15th, or is it the 24th? Because then she'll just keep pumping that date. Oh, I'll sign it again, I'll sign it again. It's only 90 days, so.
Well, that will be up. That will be up to the CMOH to decide. We don't decide. We follow. And I know people don't like that, and I know people are frustrated, but we're not going to break the law, and we're not going to ask our staff to break the law. So does anybody else have a comment from council?
Can I finish, Mayor Barkley?
Oh, sorry, I thought you were.
Yeah,
We need to be moving on here because we have a 4 o'clock.
Oh, okay. No, go ahead. Yes. Thank you.
Your worship, thanks. And, we do have an agenda to follow. We, our rules were 10 minutes and we made sure, no, I'm not done. I get to speak now. Is that we're here to listen, and we want to make sure that, we go back to council when we get time to come back and debate this. But at the end of the day, we want to make sure that we can get back to you and we can debate it as a group. And so thanks for your time. That's what I wanted to say. I think we're done.
Yeah, Councillor Bates.
Yeah, really the only thing I have to say is during the Zoom of pre-election, I think I was quite clear in saying the answer to some of the questions that no doubt came from this group, that I don't have the expertise, nor do I have the authority and jurisdiction to challenge provincial law. It's quite simple. I don't have the authority and I don't have the expertise. And to expect this municipality to run up the middle and challenge the province, I don't think that's reasonable. And so at this point in time, I'm willing to discuss more. I'm willing to hear more, but the reality is we don't have that jurisdiction or authority. And I will be inclined to follow provincial law. I do with everything else I do, whether it's my driving or whatever. And like, the reality is this, I've been to several arenas. I follow a lot of kids in my life. And I was in one yesterday in Cochrane, and they have the REP for everything. You don't walk in there for minor hockey or minor ringette or anything. They have it. once inside, they're fairly similar to us. But you don't get in there if you don't have the REP. I'm not advocating that for here because that's not what we've been asked to do. We've only been asked to implement the REP for adult programming where we want to go beyond 30%. It's simple. And somebody said to me today, are you going for the big vote? There's no big vote here today about putting REP in or out, or I believe the men's hockey league became an issue. There's nothing else at this point that is an issue. I believe down the road, when the Eagles start playing, that'll become an event, and trying to figure out how to integrate minor hockey with the Eagles and separate the two. Unless we go all the way the other way, which I doubt you want to see, which most municipalities have done. I golf with a guy who's playing men's rec hockey in Penhold. And I know he started the second week of October because he quit golfing. He's been doing REP ever since. And yeah, it never came to this council until 10 days ago. Week ago, that we had difficulties with our men's hockey. I've been in the arena several times. There's no REP. You're basically supposed to wear a mask when you go in the door and should keep it on. And if you go out in the stands, there's the odd person that are taking them off once they're settled with their family group. And I don't see anybody making a big deal of that, but there's no heavy hand out there. So I don't have the expertise. I don't have the authority and jurisdiction. I would like to spend my time dealing with the important issues that we have coming up, which are budget and how to run the municipality within the jurisdiction of what we do have. That's where I'm at.
Thank you, Gavin.
Thank you.
I do have a question. If you're saying that it was a problem with the men's hockey, I'm just trying to understand, if it's a 130 capacity, why are you requiring the rec men's hockey team to give you their personal health information on their vaccination status?
I'm not requiring that at all. The provincial government states, I believe, that if you have adults delineated from children because of their less likelihood to become ill, and all of that is in transition, everything's changing, that if you have a purely adult program, that you have an REP. Someone help me with that. I believe that's the provincial health guideline or public policy. And I'm not in position to challenge that public policy. And I doubt if there's,
It's our human rights. That's part of what I read.
But I think you're at the wrong government level. You need to start
We have to start
at the top and work
municipal
down.
level. You represent us. If we can't go to you, now you're saying we go to Devon. I've already said, I've invited Devon to the table. Let's talk about it.
I doubt this municipality is going to change the province of Alberta. And I don't think you.
I said, let's come up with an ingenious idea where Innisfail leads. Look at the people. There are more people who are using.
One of
facilities.
our problems, and you're going to see it at budget time, is money. We could triple your taxes and employ all the experts that you could imagine. And when we got to the provincial government with them, their credibility compared to what they have for resources would be questioned. That's the reality I face.
Okay, well, thank you. Anyone else have anything? Okay, so that's, we'll move on to our second delegation now. So thank you.
Thank you, Mayor and Council, for this delegation. First, I wanted to give the clarification as to why there was confusion with the delegation, because I sent an email to CEO Becker and Mayor Barkley requesting a delegation and never heard back until it was on the agenda. So there was another delegation that came forward. So that's why there was confusion, because Mr. Hillman was actually on mine originally. I also want to state that there's plenty of people in the gallery. There's as many people outside. There was a known delegation to be here, and I never seen one person in this room get up to see where this delegation was, to accommodate, to see where they were, to know we're over capacity, to accommodate the people that wanted to come in and speak to you. It would have been just fine with you if they had just left. What I hear is that we have a council and that we can't do anything about it. If you're not fighting against discrimination, then you're for it. We can't discriminate, and we all know that we can't discriminate against sexual orientation, religion, color, creed, where you come from. So why is it okay to discriminate in your guys' minds against somebody that does not, that has an informed decision on whether to get a vaccine or not? This discrimination is going to come back on you. So stop saying that it's another government level, because I've talked to MPs, I've talked to MLAs, and every single one of them says it's a different level of government. So if you're not fighting against discrimination, then you are discriminating. You're discriminating against the people that want to go into those arenas, the pools, the restaurants, et cetera. If you're not actively fighting against it, then you're for it, period, and stop, full. So start fighting against discrimination, as we know it's not okay. I'm going to read to you a letter that Dr. Bloxham wanted to be here to say this, but I'm going to read it for you. Dear Council, you are making a vote that significantly impacts our children. And I just want to interject, because you say that the REP program isn't in place right now here, but we know it's coming because we see the writing on the wall. So this is why we're here now, to stop it before it does come, so that we can make reasonable decisions. You're making a vote that significantly impacts our children, that you may have the opportunity to contribute to the decision. When you're making this vote, please make it based on the facts, not fear. The vaccination can spread, contract the virus. Vaccinated can spread the contracted virus. The vax viral load in their airways is higher than unvaxxed. These are facts. As of October 31st, 21, per Alberta stats, one person has died age 0 to 19, age group 70 plus. Deaths is 76.9%. That's over 70. So I want to just reiterate that 99.99% of anybody under 19 has not been affected by COVID, but there's vast effects from the vaccine. 3, child survival rate, 99.99%. The total survival rate in Alberta, 99.93. 4, I have this is Dr. Bloxham, I have 5,886 patients. In the last 6 months, I have been informed by patients and contacts of 10 kids aged 12 to 19 commit suicide due to mental stress of COVID. That should be very alarming. Due to mental stress of COVID. In the last month, I've had 3 parents talk to me about kids writing suicide letters. Depression rates in our children and adults has skyrocketed. This is what I know. Kids need socialization in their sports. The decision you make today will impact, and I understand it may not be today. I get that, obviously. The decision you make today will impact if kids will stay in sports due to the discriminatory policy on them and their parents. Under the age 40, parents and kids have very high level of success surviving regarding a vaccination status. Please keep our community facilities open to everyone versus making a fear-based decision. I feel the consequences of kids missing out on sports is a bigger danger, short and long-term, than 99.93 survival rate to Albertans. So again, the reason we've got this council and the reason we've got this delegation and all of these letters, and there's more, is because we want to stop the discrimination. You guys know it's not right. So start fighting against it. Stop blaming the other governments and lobby the other governments to stop the discrimination. And hopefully you can make your 4 o'clock.
Okay, I guess we will move on. Does any counselor, do you have any response or anything? No, okay. So we will move on to CEO Becker is asset management. Ready? Not on, okay.
No, it's up to the mayor. He's asking if you could speak.
Briefly.
And my name is Darren Paul. I'm one of the citizens, and I just wanted to just say a few words. I just wanted to urge caution and humility in this discussion. There's a saying that if we don't know history, we're doomed to repeat it. History has shown us that majority opinion is not always moral or just, and not every law or order is always moral and just. In fact, history has shown that it is often majority opinion and laws that have led to the marginalization and persecution of minority groups. I stand before you as one of the visible minority groups, and I know from experience the devastating effect majority opinion can have on an individual. The unvaccinated have become the newest marginalized group in our society. And as such, they deserve the protection afforded by our courts, the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, our elected and non-elected officials, and law enforcement. They deserve protection rather than persecution. They deserve accommodation, not exclusion. They are our brothers and sisters, our neighbors and our friends, our construction workers, meat packers, doctors, lawyers, and accountants. They serve and contribute to our communities, and they pay taxes. As such, I urge you to problem solve and come up with a solution so that the unvaccinated can be accommodated at all facilities in our community. As a society, we seem to be enacting policies that are pushing us closer and closer to a precipice, beyond which lies unspeakable atrocities that we may someday be called into question for, atrocities that we may even fall victim to ourselves should the winds of change blow the other way. It was just Remembrance Day, and we need to be reminded that our soldiers fought and died, not so that we just might live, but that we might live free. We can live under tyranny of any sort, whether it be fascism or communism, but it is not living free. And they did it not just for the majority, but for all of us. Don't dishonor their memory now, please. I urge you. You've been elected to an honorable office, and I hope that you will conduct yourselves honorably.
We will, thank you. Okay, so we'll move on to 4.1, request for decision on the Federation of Canadian Municipalities Convention. Or is asset management on? Karen? Okay,
Maybe,
well, we'll take a 5-minute recess. If that's
yeah,
okay.
yes, please.
Do we need a motion for that, Tom?
Yeah, motion
Yeah,
to
okay.
recess.
Motion. Somebody, Councillor Wing, we'll take a,
Yes, your worship, I make that motion.
okay, thank you. We'll be back in 5 minutes. Sorry. Okay, we'll call the meeting back to order. And just before we proceed with the our asset management delegation, and just so people are aware of other facilities in the area and other communities, what they're doing. So from Drayton Valley, September 29th, they held a special council meeting where council committed to adhering to the HS business capacity and operating restrictions at the Omniplex and Park Valley Pool. Council rescinded their decision to implement a restriction exemption program at the Health and Fitness Center and Conference Center. What this means is that all user groups that provide or host adult indoor group classes, activities, or competitions or to acquire exemptions through the province in order to continue with the program, the user groups are required to implement their own REP and would be responsible to enforce within the program. So I think similar to our men's rec hockey. Adult programming is not permitted at the Omniplex, the Health and Fitness Center, the Conference Center, and the Park Valley Pool. Black Falls, after 2 months of 1/3 fire code occupancy with social distancing and mandatory face covering requirements, Black Falls is implementing the restriction exemption program in the Abbey Center and Community Center as of today. Ponoka, the Ponoka Aquaplex, Arena Complex, and private bookings of the Nature and Activity Center as of today are applying the REP program, which includes spectators aged 12 years and older, will be required to show one of the following: proof of vaccination, proof of privately paid negative rapid test within 72 hours before attending the facility, or ballot documentation showing proof of medical exemption. And in Olds, the restrictions exemption program for the Aquatic Center and the Olds Sportsplex means that adults age 18 years or older who are participating in sport, fitness, recreation, or performance activities, as well as any spectators age 12 years or older, must provide the same as listed above. So without an REP in place, the government prohibits adults 18 years of age and older from indoor sport, fitness, and performance activities. So just so people can see, I think Innisfail in the scheme of things is doing the best we can. We've implemented the 1/3 capacity at our recreation facilities for kids programs so that those can continue. And we've implemented the REP program for adults so that we can have adult programming. Without that, we would have none. So I think we're doing the best we can under these circumstances. And as I said before, I don't think we're going to entertain not following ministerial orders. And we're not going to break the law. We've discussed that as a council before. So we will continue on with the meeting. Kara, is Associated Engineering ready now? And would you like to introduce them, CEO Becker or Director Kennedy?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor Barkley. So we have online here Owen James and Craig McDonald from Associated Engineering. We engaged them a few months ago to get going further into our strategic asset management plan and develop a program where we can start to move forward in our asset management programming. We've done a lot of work over the last couple of years in regards to the data and the collection and the forming of the information. So this is that next step into getting a program together. And what this is just an overview so that council's aware of where we're going, kind of what this program means. Really valuable in regards to having an idea of how we make decisions or would like to make decisions in the future when it comes to budgeting and moving forward with the town. So I'll hand it over to Owen.
Are they there, Kara?
Yes,
Okay,
they're just not able to unmute them.
okay.
I can just ask for a few minutes here just to help them. Owen, I am just going to make you the host here and see if that works. I did send a request for co-host. Craig, are you getting the?
There we
oh,
go. I
there you
got the
go.
unmute on my end,
Okay,
and we'll just see whether that went through to Owen as well.
Owen just signed back on here.
Okay. Are you able to unmute yourself now, Owen?
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay, all right. I'll
I'm
put
just
my,
ask- Yeah, there we go.
and you can see me as well. It's like one of those games, isn't it? You're talking and you're trying to make all the technology work, but it doesn't seem to work for you. So my apologies for that. I'm Owen James. Good afternoon, everybody. I have on the line with me here Craig McDonald, and I'm going to share my screen. Hopefully sharing my screen works a little bit earlier, a little bit easier than okay, does that work?
Yes, that works.
Great, awesome. So good afternoon, everybody. I'm Owen James and Craig McDonald we're both from Associated Engineering, Associated Strategic Advisory Services. We've been working with Stephen, Megan, and the team here just really over the last month and a half to advance this asset management initiative, as Stephen described just a moment ago. So we've just got a handful of slides that we wanted to go through, partly by awareness on what asset management is, but also to describe the initiative that we've been working on over the last month and a half, and where we think the next steps are. Definitely, if there's any questions or comments, shout out, let me know, and we can take them as we go. I've gone through this. We're both actually based in Calgary, so we're just down the road here. And we've been working with Canadian municipalities, not just in Alberta, but right across Canada. For myself, that's been over the last 9 years here. And prior to that, I worked in the UK, which you might be able to tell, working in asset management in a large utility organization. So the first slide here, what are assets? What do we mean by assets? We're primarily talking about physical assets. Assets, obviously, they're the fabric of our society, essential to meet the social and recreational needs of society, to protect public health, enable economic development, and ultimately support sustainable society. So I guess the key message is, hope you appreciate that assets are important. We got some pictures here of some of Innisfail's fantastic assets. I guess the other one that I would add to this, which isn't necessarily reflected by the pictures, is
what about that natural capital, the natural assets that you have within the Innisfail vicinity? So we're primarily focused on the physical assets, but I don't want to lose sight of the natural asset capital as well. So what does that look like for Innisfail? Well, it looks like those great pictures, and those great pictures add up to somewhere in the region of $247 million worth of infrastructure. There was an infrastructure status report that was completed for the linear infrastructure. So we've got a good handle on that. And then every year, the town reports its tangible capital asset inventory, and we're able to understand, well, what does that mean across the whole portfolio of assets? So you can see that the vast majority of the asset portfolio is in roads and laneways, storm and sanitary sewers, the water system, and then buildings. But then sidewalks and trails, vehicles, parks, and other equipment makes up another huge chunk of the asset inventory. So if you had that money in cash, you'd think carefully about how you would invest that money. So the same goes for the physical assets. If you have that dollar value in physical assets, you want to think carefully around how that's maintained and looked after, and what do you want to do with it, and what are your goals. The State of Infrastructure report that was completed last year for the linear infrastructure indicated that the state of those assets is generally in pretty good condition. But as we know, things don't stay good forever. Assets age, they deteriorate. That's going to cost money to fix them, either that or customers, the community, could be the services that you provide to the community could be impacted. So certainly don't want to take that good condition for granted. That's achieved through the good work that the town has done, over the last years. But going forward, a robust approach to asset management is important, is essential, and ultimately supports community sustainability. And by community sustainability, we mean not just environmental sustainability, but financial sustainability, the ability of the community to continue to function as a good community. So that's a quick summary of the asset portfolio. You probably hear in the media all the time that some of the pressures that municipalities face and that asset portfolio is facing. I mentioned just a moment ago about asset deterioration. There are demographic challenges. People want different things. That if there's growing population, you need to be able to support that growing population. If you don't have the growing population, then the tax revenue is largely static, and it makes it more challenging to reinvest into the asset base. So whatever the demographic is for the community, it's important and influences the way you invest in that asset portfolio. We hear every single day around how a changing climate is impacting community resilience, how that's going to cause challenges for communities. And then at the same time, service expectations and affordability changes. So as younger families move into Innisfail, their service expectations are going to be different. Maybe the demographic shift is more towards older people, and perhaps they have a different service expectation of facilities. So within all that complexity, it's important to have a systematic approach to manage that in a meaningful way. So Q asset management then there is an international standard for it, and it defines it as the coordinated activity of an organization to realize value from assets. Now, the FCM interpretation of that is perhaps a little bit more meaningful. It's an integrated approach involving all organizational departments to effectively manage existing and new assets to deliver services. So ultimately, it's not really about the assets at all. It's about the services that are provided to customers and the community. So that's essentially what asset management is. And I know that lots of people have heard of asset management before. You might have heard about it in another organization or in another context. For a lot of people, they think it's about having an asset management plan, or perhaps it's about a piece of software, or perhaps it's around collecting data about your assets. It's all of those things, but at the same time, it's not just those things. It's really around people working together, collaborating, helping to make decisions. And then in terms of the people, it's not just about the staff or the asset management coordinator. It's not just about Stephen or Megan or us as consultants. It's about all of the staff throughout the town of Innisfail, but also it's about council. By inference, you have a big influence on asset management decision making, and thereby you're also asset managers. So there's a new way of thinking about things. It's everybody's job. So what's council's role in providing that service, in that asset management framework? So as council represents citizens and community, council's responsible for helping to develop that vision, that mission, helping to identify the objectives, service expectations and goals for the town. So whether that be at the highest level, taking pride in the community's diversity, beauty and economic opportunity, which is currently the city's, the town's mission, or whether it be about service expectations in terms of safe, clean and reliable water supplies. That's very much a message that you would expect to hear from council, so from all of you around the table here. The role of asset management then is, and the senior leadership, is to translate that. What does that mean for the asset base? What does it mean for the staff? What does it mean for the services that are actually provided and the day-to-day activities that take place on the ground? And then those day-to-day activities, those are the things that enables citizen and community services to be provided in line with that vision, that mission, that strategic plan. So you can see that council, if this is the asset management circle, council are very much part of that circle. So we all have a role to play. So if we put a framework on that, I talked about a systematic approach from asset management. This systematic approach helps if we can put it into some sort of a framework where things relate to each other. It is essentially like a management system. If people have heard of things like quality management systems, health and safety management systems, environmental management systems, we accept those as being important elements of keeping us safe, making sure that we're doing the right thing, making sure that we're not polluting the environment. So asset management is really no different. An asset management system is a structured approach to make sure that we are tending the assets in a meaningful way and providing those services sustainably. It's driven from top down, from the top, i.e. from you, council, with those organizational plans and objectives. That helps drive asset management policy, which drives a strategic asset management plan. And we'll talk about the strategic asset management plan in just a moment here. from that strategic asset management plan, it sets the framework for developing plans for assets. So we want to invest in the swimming pool. We want to invest in water mains. We want to go and fix those potholes. We want to go and hire a new public works operator. All of that is investing dollars in the assets and asset operations. When you actually enact those plans, that means that you're spending money on assets or spending money on staff resources, which influences the asset portfolio. And then it's important to measure the performance of that asset portfolio. Are we providing the services to customers as they expected? And we can begin to use that feedback to influence updates to the plans. So you can see that there's a plan, do, check, act cycle in this framework here. It takes time to build this framework and get it working smoothly. So I don't pretend for 1 minute it might look simple. It's not simple. It does take time to do. Happens over a period of years. I put down here, it demands feedback to drive improvement. Craig indicated that he was hesitant about using the word demand. I wanted that in there because I think as council, you need to demand this. You need to demand, how are we doing here? How are we doing today? How are we doing tomorrow? What do we need to do differently? What services are we providing? How well are those services being provided? Because this is what the citizens are telling me. This is what the community is telling me. So maintaining that visibility, maintaining that transparency is essential throughout this whole process. So I do think that that demand is important, and I do think that that is a role of council to make those demands. I wanted to focus just on the strategic asset management plan. That was the document that we circulated to you just before the meeting there, or last week. So hopefully people have had a chance to look at that. Is there a question there, or are we good to carry on?
I believe we can carry on. Thank you.
Okay. I just heard a peep peep and wasn't sure if that was a question coming in. Okay. So quick, I said we wanted to focus on that strategic asset management plan. So that was that document that we circulated. It is a draft. So I wanted to provide that caveat. It is the first draft. What the strategic asset management plan is intended to do is to convert, translate, set the framework. So convert and translate the strategic plan and the policy, and then set the framework for asset management planning, which is that next step in the cycle. So it translates objectives, it provides that improvement plan. You'll have seen those things in there. It sets the asset management framework, and it also talks about governance and roles. We've put a first pitch in there on what we think council's role is, what we think the CAO's role is, what we think the leadership role is. You know, you can help us shape those and influence them. That's part of that direction setting process. And then the plans for investment, the capital plans, the operating plans, the community plans, the master plans, all fit within this asset management planning framework here. So that's about where do we want to spend the dollars on our infrastructure or in our organizational activities. So just looking back and looking forward, Stephen mentioned in the introduction there, a lot of progress has been made. So there is a policy already in place. It's been in place for a few years. There is an inventory of assets. That is a strong foundation, having that data and evidence to know what you've got and know what condition it is, what condition it's in. That inventory is there in Munisite, certainly for the linear infrastructure. There's a state of infrastructure report, which we've referenced earlier on, that good condition status and the value of the linear infrastructure is certainly coming out of that state of infrastructure report. And then the funding from the Federation of Canadian Municipalities through their municipal asset management program. That's what's funding this initiative that we're working on here at the moment. So this project is the Strategic Asset Management Plan, which is that roadmap. Hopefully you've had a chance to look at that. And then what comes next? Where are we going? It's the asset management plans, the long-term financial plan, which gives that financial visibility to you and to the leadership, senior administration here, which is two of those actions are really about implementing that roadmap. But in the back of that document, you'll have noticed, hopefully, that there were 17 priority actions that are in that asset management roadmap. And two of those are the plans and the long-term financial plan. So we just wanted to draw attention to those. The first action in that asset management roadmap is really around finessing this SAMP and approving it. So we're hoping that this will come back to you at some stage here and you'll be able to approve this to go forwards. So that's it. That's all we wanted to share with you. I do want to take some questions if you have questions. We can share these slides here, and I do have some other slides if you want to dive down into more detail. But I'll open the table. I'll stop and open the table just there.
Okay, thank you very much, Owen. Does council have any questions or comments? CEO Becker.
Thanks for the presentation. Can you go a little deeper on the report card? Would provide council a little bit more direct understanding of what asset management is on real data. Are we able to do that?
For sure, yeah. That is some of the additional slides here that we've got. So just in terms of the report card, there's like two dimensions to that. That's one dimension is the report card for the infrastructure itself. So I talked about the linear infrastructure. So this is an output of the report that was done in 2020. And you can see on the screen here, it shows some of the different asset classes: roads, sidewalks and trails, water, sanitary, storm. The majority of it is in good to very good condition. But you can see that there are some asset classes where the condition is not quite so good. So if we look at things like sanitary, you can see that probably about 50% of it is in fair to very poor condition. So only about 50% of it is in good to very good condition. When you translate, there was about $50 million on the sanitary and storm system. So you can begin to see that 17 and 11%, so 28%, if 28% of that 50 million is in poor to very poor condition, is beginning to indicate what the investment liability is there. So looking at some of these graphs and charts provides a great indication of the investment liability. The other dimension of asset management. So if you like, this is looking at your car and saying, is my car in good condition? Yeah, the wheels are good, the body is good, the electrics are still working. The other question then around asset management is about, well, how are you driving the car? If you're driving the car like a lunatic, then chances are it doesn't matter how good the asset is in at the moment, you might crash. So the other dimension of asset management is what do practices look like. So we completed an asset management review through October there, which was completed by in communication with staff. And then the big scheme of things, it's in pretty good condition. So we describe the status of asset management practices a little bit differently. We talk about it from an innocence to excellence scale. So innocent would be 0, aware would be 1, developing is 2, embedded would be 3, excellence would be then in that 4 band. So you can see that there are some things. We looked at context of the organization. How do you understand your context? How do you reach out to citizens and the communities? That's what context is. How do you understand stakeholder expectations? To what extent is your asset management system established? So that framework of plans, strategies, policies, guidance. To what extent is that? Does that exist and works with each other? Leadership is essential. So to what extent has leadership made commitments towards good asset management? Leadership is also responsible for setting policy. So there is a policy there. It's also responsible for setting roles and responsibilities, developing strategies, setting objectives, and then using those strategies and objectives to what extent you understand risks and opportunities, and you plan to mitigate those risks and make the most of those opportunities. And that results in investment and asset plans. You need the people to do that. You need information to do that. You need funds and resources to do that. To what extent you manage the life cycle and review the effectiveness of the system and then improve. So these are all the areas that we looked at, which is, how are you driving the car? Are you heavy on the brakes? Are you using the sat nav? Are you using the road map? Do you know where you're going? So you can see that there's some key strengths on here, but you can see that there's a couple of areas where we've identified we think there's some opportunities for improvement. So like risk and opportunity planning, I think that's one area that we flagged for improvement. Strategy, which will partly be fulfilled by the document that we've just developed. The improvement and review process are other areas where we think there's some opportunities. And then the investment, the asset plans would be another area where we think there's a good opportunity. Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, thanks, James. Member Beckley. Yeah, I think if you, as you put, in comparison to a car, you can do it to a house. Do you want to, buy a new couch when you have a leaky roof? So it's really applying your resources that are available for your most important assets. And just add in. So what develops this? And it's existing plans. So we have a trail master plan. We have a capital plan for our core infrastructure. We have some information on facilities. So all that data is put into the system to help you, council, understand where's the opportunities, what is working well, what is not working so well, and you can apply those resources based on your highest need, based on just shy of $250 million worth of assets. And how do we fund those assets is the conversations we need to have. Is we want to add more onto, do we want $350,000 or $1 million worth of assets? And how do we replace limit dollars or the dollars that we have to these assets? So we can generalize it. A lot of good information in the report we provided to us and council, but we just want to introduce this important conversation, and we're administratively trying to take council's policy and advance it as we can based on the time and resources that we have. And council will hear more about this within, for sure, budgets and ongoing, but it's all encompassing. It's everything that we exist with is based around this framework. So that's my little spiel, but if there's any other comments, James, Craig, Steve, Megan, Erica.
CEO Becker, Councillor Bates has a comment.
Yes, through the mayor. So I have a question. Do you, when you look at the condition and evaluate them and show the bar graphs, do you connect to the reserves and or the status of them and the trend of the reserves and offer advice and that connection?
From Berkeley, we haven't connected them to the reserves. I think that's one of our goals and strategy will be to tie this more directly into our status of financial and how that relates to the reserves we have. To date, we haven't. I don't think our reserves have been allocated or identified that way. And that's part of the process with this is to what makes sense. You know, we say we have $14 million in reserves. What does that mean, right? So that is definitely one of the tasks. So this hopefully will bring up.
If I could, Mayor Barkley, to add supplement to Councillor Bates, without a clear reserves policy on what level reserve do you want to establish and where, how is it used? Right now, you can allocate those reserves as you like, but for clear direction and those targets to apply it, it'd be through a policy framework. And that's what Director Vickers would be proposing to you in the near future, that we need to have a reserves policy. There is a large component. So I'm interjecting.
Do you mind if I just add a comment to that as well? So just in terms of looking at these condition charts, you know, we do tend to overly focus on condition. What's, you know, associated with a profile like the one that's on screen at the moment would be a level of service. And that's very much a conversation that you should be having that will influence how those reserves are allocated, what levels those reserves should be at, where are the investment dollars going. So it's very much around that level of service piece. So condition is obviously a part of that conversation, but if this is your condition profile at the moment, yes, there are a number of assets that are in very poor condition. To have all of your assets in excellent condition would be financially crippling, and it wouldn't necessarily be affordable, and the community may not appreciate the value associated with that. So it's really a conversation around where do you want your level of service at the moment. If people are, in the big scheme of things, happy at the moment, then that's great. There's an affordability envelope on that. If customers' level of service is not where it needs to be, then there may be a higher cost associated with that. So that's all part of that dialogue around linking the information that we've got here to financial considerations and reserve levels and investment needs.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Wing.
Thank you, Mayor Barkley, through the mayor. I appreciate budget is coming up next week, and also the ICF that we have in place with Red Deer County. But when we talk about policy relative to any reserves in our asset management program, would this be part of the conversation we would be having with regional partners as well, or, you know, from a policy perspective? And is that a part of the intermunicipal agreement?
Mayor Barkley, to Councilor Ring, right now it's not a requirement of the ICF. I do believe Red Deer County administration would like to talk about, you know, capital for recreation facilities, and that's one area we need to build into this framework is those amenities of recreation. Those are coming into play, but we're not quite there yet. But I think with real data, it would actually put you in a place to have those meaningful political governance conversations with your stakeholders in the region.
Okay, thank you. Anything else? Okay, well, thank you very much, Owen. And Craig, did you want to comment or?
Yeah, absolutely. Just that it's been nice working with the town on this. All the staff we've talked to so far have just been really engaged in the process, and it's just really nice to see. And like Owen was emphasizing earlier, this is really one of those things where you get out as much as you put into it. So there is some upfront work into getting all these practices and processes in place, but it will really start making your lives easier, and not just a long ways down the road either. It'll be helpful the next time we have to write budgets, do investment planning, or even when we just want to communicate with the constituents on how well we're providing services. So it's just been really nice to work with the town on this because everyone seems really engaged.
Okay, well, thank you. That's great to hear and not surprising at all. Okay, so was that all for this delegation? Okay, well, thank you very much for the presentation today and your insights. Very interesting. And I'm sure that Director Kennedy will carry on with what he needs to do.
Thank you very much. No, that was great. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Have a good day.
So with that, Mayor Barkley, if you could have council consider accepting that report as information.
Yeah. Can I have somebody make that motion, please?
I'd like to make that motion, Mayor Barkley.
Thank you, Councillor Maceras. All in favor? Thank you. Okay, so we will move on now to 4.1, request for decision on FCM convention. And did you want to choose names today, CEO
Yeah. Becker, or? Mayor Barkley, I'll introduce the report and
Yeah.
see how you wish to
Sure,
proceed.
okay.
So the report includes a little bit of information on FCM, which is the Federation of Canadian Municipalities. So they're the big sibling, older sibling of AUMA. So they're a national body, where AUMA is a provincial body. So each year, council has, in recent history anyway, has appointed council members to attend FCM conference, and it's scattered across Canada. And it's just so fortunate that in 2022, the FCM conference is in Regina, so it's not very far away. Often we'd have the list over your length of your term of where the different conferences would be over that next 4 years. Council would often speak, especially at the onset of your term, what is FCM? Is there benefit in attending FCM conference and those activities? And should we appoint council members to attend? So I think that's one, is seek understanding of what FCM is, the purpose of the conference, and those that have attended, is there value in attending? I certainly have my view from administration side. And because the conference is really not too far away, is to often you would select to be through a draw format if you wish to attend, those 2 to 3 members for who would attend. So last term of council, it was 2 members of council attended plus the mayor and the CAO. I think prior to that, previous council, I think was 2 members of council. So a few different options. There's impacted budgets, as you can see in the report. So just looking to see if you wish to attend the FCM conference in June of 2022.
I believe CEO Becker last term, it was 2 as well. I think just that one in Quebec City, right? That was.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor Romaine wanted to go with what was going on. So is council interested in picking names today, or would you like to do that? We can do that next time. What we did before is we just put them into a hat and the names were chosen out of it. Councillor Dunham.
Mayor Barkley, CEO Becker was mentioning about the previous attendees. For anybody here who has, I'd love to hear some feedback on it, because it's obviously fairly new to me, but
Yeah.
if anybody has any feedback or can offer their what they saw in their value or whether it was valued.
Well, I've
Great to hear
been
it.
once, Counselor Bates has been more than once and probably, no, Jason, no, Counselor Haystad, not at all. Okay. Was fortunate enough my name got picked for Quebec City, so that was quite lovely, but it's different than AUMA in the, I guess, from the aspect that it's federal as opposed to provincial only. But I think the benefit that I got of it, you get to meet counselors, elected officials from all across the country. You're seeing people on stage, prime minister, opposition parties, etc. And just that networking that goes on, as well as there's breakout sessions. So you can choose whatever breakout session, but I found it very informative and very worthwhile. And I think Councillor Bates would probably add to, I'm putting him on the spot now, but Councillor Bates has been a couple of times at least, and maybe 3 now, I'm not sure.
So I've been twice. My first term on council had the lucky draw of going to Edmonton. But it was actually very informative. And the last time was Halifax, which wasn't glorious, but it was also very informative. It was interesting because I do remember Mayor Barclay actually questioning as a new councillor whether or not it was worthwhile. And I made a real effort when we went to Halifax, because that was the first one in that council term to document daily what I had done and brought a report back. And yeah, I guess I felt that the subsequent years, I didn't get as much of a report from the other councillors as I might have, but the one thing that we did do in Halifax that is kind of reflecting now is the last wheelchair accessible van kind of was born out of a system that we saw down there that was much smaller, and much more self-sufficient, but nonetheless, it kind of was the spawn of us working on that. So yeah, overall, I feel it's beneficial. I would suggest we take it 1 year at a time, and whoever does get picked for the first one, do put some effort into reporting back as to, specifically some of the, and try to really look at the various field trips, etc., that they offer, because those can be very informative. So, and I think 2 is a good number. I don't think we should reach much beyond that. Plus the CAO, I think, is because the CAOs always meet down there, etc. Traditionally, Alberta has had a higher than expected ratio of municipal attendees. When there's elections, etc., Alberta packs a wallop because they do have a high ratio. That's what I'd have to contribute.
Yeah, and I think as well that, you can become very insulated in your own province or your own community, and you now have the ability or the opportunity to meet other elected officials from across the country and understand what's going on in their communities, which is extremely valuable. So what we think is happening in Alberta is the utmost importance, of course, and yet I remember going to a climate breakout session, and there was 3 people on stage, and I mean, they were all dealing with huge issues because of global warming and flooding in their communities, and the cost to infrastructure was going to be enormous that they had to deal with. And so you see that there are issues in other areas of the country, and it's not just about us. So I have found it, I did find it very valuable. So, Councillor Hystad.
Your worship, yeah, I didn't have the opportunity to go, and I'm glad that this council or in previous councils have gone to FCM, because I do value the educational component. I know that they have a women in leadership that they're actually promoting right now, and I think there's opportunities for Innisfail to actually apply for those grants when they come open in about 8 months, I think it is. No, I value this, and I think that Councillor Bates did the right thing, is reporting back and making sure that there was value in it. So I support this.
Okay, thank you. So maybe what we'll do in the essence of time, maybe for next council meeting, we can prepare that.
Actually, we have the names in a
Oh,
cup.
do
Let's
you?
see,
Oh,
a
boy.
couple-
Oh, you're efficient. You're so
Surprise,
efficient.
surprise. So,
Okay.
with council's permission, we would select 2 names to attend the Regina conference.
Yeah, take my name out because I was to the last one. So I'd rather, if there's opportunities for new counselors to go to do that. So,
Okay, we'll see.
yeah, no,
if you get
really,
pulled or not, and then
seriously.
go from there.
I would volunteer that you could take mine out as well, as soon as I've been to 2.
And the winner is? Don Harrison going to Regina, June 2nd to 5th. No, I was taking my redraw. Oh. Okay,
I'd be happy to pass.
did you? Okay, so Councillor Hystad and Councillor Hairston going to Regina. Okay, June 2nd to 5th. So congratulations. No, you'll really enjoy it. And we expect comprehensive reports. Okay. Do we need a motion? We'll accept. Yeah. Yes, as per the one that's in front of me. Yes, pay attention. Yeah. Okay, could I please have somebody make the recommended motion? Yeah.
I'll move the recommended action inclusive of the fact that councillors Harrison and Hystad are off to Regina.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Bates. Any discussion? All in favor? What? You can vote. Yeah, you can vote. Okay, and we'll move on to 4.2, the Energy Management Project. Director Jenkins.
Okay, so this is just another background report for council and sort of a series that we've been going through in advance of capital budget conversations coming up next week. So the town pursued a process through AUMA in partnership with Train Technology to have investment grade audits prepared for town buildings to assess their energy usage and identify energy conservation measures. So the project provides a baseline for energy performance and outlines energy conservation and generation measures that would reduce greenhouse gas emissions from the subject facilities by a minimum of 30%. Based on an evaluation of the ECMs identified, there's a total project budget. It's actually about 1.3 million is the total. If you looked through the IGA, there is 1.6 is the total, but there was a couple of projects that just based on conversations with our facilities staff that we maybe aren't quite prepared to move forward with a couple of those at this time. So the primary components of the project include new HVAC controls and commissioning at the arena, curling rink, town office, and library. Furnace replacements at the arena, lighting upgrades and controls at the arena, curling rink, town office, operations and park shop, installation of solar PV on the fire hall, an expansion of the existing solar PV on the town office, and installation at the curling rink, vending machine controls at the arena and the library, and then project management, 3 years of monitoring and verification through Train, as well as support for communication and education for the community. So the completion of the project will result in an annual savings of $95,845 in utility costs, resulting in a 17-year simple payback without any grants or rebates being achieved. So that is a guaranteed energy savings provided, which will be part of the agreements with Train, that if the energy savings don't equate to what they've estimated in the report, there would either be a compensation for that amount, or they'll continue to work with us to achieve those savings. The identified lighting at the library, as well as the furnace plate replacements at the arena, are offsets of costs that were currently identified as capital projects. So those upgrades were already identified as things that we were hoping to do in our current capital plans, not just as part of this project. So in terms of financial impacts, again mentioned, we're looking at about that $1.3 million overall project cost. There are a number of grants and rebates that we will be looking to access to help offset that initial cost. The Municipal Climate Change Action Center Recreation Energy Program. We have applications prepared to submit to this program, but we do need to be at a point where we actually have a contract with Train to finalize those submissions. This program has had a high subscription rate, but if we are successful, we would receive up to 75% of the upgrades being pursued at the arena and the curling rink, excluding the solar PV. So that could be up to $236,000. The Municipal Climate Change Action Municipal Solar Program, same situation, we're waiting to submit those. But if successful, we would get 75 cents per watt of installed solar PV, so up to 174,000 through that program. And then there's also the Green Inclusive Community Building Fund, as well as the FCM greenhouse gas retrofits. So those are some of the grants that we also talked about potentially with the multiplex or facility redevelopment projects. So we're just in the process of preparing those grants as well. So there is potential to offset a very large portion of these. We are looking into which ones can be stacked and what can be doubled up, because some only apply to recreation facilities, some apply across the board, those types of things. And then just the last one, the Investing in Canada Infrastructure Program. The applications for that program are actually closed, but that is another funding stream that may come available in the future. So again, just information if there's any questions, but giving council a chance to look at that before it comes as part of your package for next week. Again, the full report is included in the agenda package. Really, the only ECM that's identified in the report that we're not pursuing is the reflective ceiling in the arena. And simply because we do have some issues with the roof in the arena, and we want to make sure that we have all those dealt with before we install some new reflective ceiling in the rink. So yeah, if there's any questions from there.
Okay, thank you, Director Jenkins. Could I please have someone make a motion that we accept this report as information?
I'll make that motion, Councillor
Thank you. Yeah,
Mayor
whatever.
Barkley, sorry.
Thank you, Councillor Hystad. Any discussion, questions? Councillor Maceras?
Thank you, Mayor Barkley. I found it a very interesting report. And when you said today that you have an agreement with Train that they honor what they proposed here in terms of savings? Because I noticed there was a very long disclaimer at the front of the report. And so I'm wondering if that's what, you know, if they're kind of agreeing to ignore their own disclaimer by.
So there will be a contract drafted, and part of our initial contract, that's their agreement with AUMA, is that the way these energy savings conservation measures are laid out, that they will guarantee that a certain amount once we move into that contract process. So I essentially with the IGA, that's the higher level report, and then we'll have the final details once they have the specifications of the individual pieces of equipment that will be installed. So.
CEO Becker?
Just not so much technically, but just the relationship with Train and AUMA. So AUMA procured this process. They went out to market, and Train received the bid to help. AUMA is looking at enhancing their service offerings. So they put out to 6 municipalities to participate with this with an engagement, we were selected to move into pilot projects and that's why you're seeing investment. We saved $30,000, Megan, by our audit through the audit process. So that was for us to being selected in a pilot project was savings to the town. So we didn't have to fork over those dollars. I only know of the one other municipality right now off the cuff of the 6 that is doing this, and that's the town of Canmore. I'm not sure about the others. So it is a relationship that's being explored. AUMA, and they're watching how this proceeds, and they want to see if they can take this information, the energy management process, and apply it to their own offerings to other Alberta's urban municipalities. So benefit is to us with a guarantee from Train as well. I think, Megan, just if you don't mind, Mayor Barkley, just a question: why is this important? Just to put you on the spot a little bit, and why is this good for the town of Innisfail?
I guess off the front end, there's the utility savings on the improved efficiencies of the facilities. As well, when we look at the greenhouse gas emission reductions, when we look at the grants and the funding that is available, a lot of these are tied to either some sort of greenhouse gas emission reduction or energy efficiency targets if we're doing these upgrades and repairs at our facilities anyways. That's a mechanism to be able to do these baseline measurements to be able to meet these grant requirements. Also, if you went through the Train IGA report, they do have some projections in terms of future utility costs, changes just in the commodity price, as well as factoring in changes to carbon tax and how that will impact expenses for the municipality.
Okay, Councilor
Mayor Barkley, I'm curious, and I know we'll have an opportunity to talk about this more in depth next week with budget, but I'm curious I'm curious if this particular plan fits with the asset management program. And I'm also curious about a 17-year payback, and if that's an appropriate amount of time, or is that too long, or what are we hearing from other municipalities or organizations in general with large capital assets around that payback?
I guess I can comment, and that's the one comment in the report, is that some of these upgrades are consistent with capital projects that we were doing anyways, whether it's the lighting upgrades, 8 of the furnaces at the arena are our original furnaces in the facility. So these were things that were already tagged to be replaced. So that certainly ties in with our asset management. As Associated Engineering mentioned, our facilities are definitely further behind in the asset management process than our linear assets, as they refer to them. So we are, and you'll see in budget next week, even looking at those facility assessments to get more of a baseline idea of where we're at in our facilities and what we should be doing for ongoing upgrades and maintenance.
Okay, thank you. So we had Councillor Hystad make the motion. Yes. Yeah, a while back. Yeah, no, that's good. No, that's great. So all in favor? Okay, thank you. So we'll start with our roundtable discussion. I'm going to go to Councillor Dunham first.
A little bit of a slow week last week, but obviously on Thursday, November 11th, I had the pleasure and honor of attending our Remembrance Day ceremonies. And it had been a few years since I had an opportunity to attend one. And it really, with everything that's going on and a few things that were mentioned here today, it really made me think again as to why I originally ran to become a counselor, why I'm part of this community, and why I do the things that I do. And it was a very elevating experience, and I'm glad that I was able to partake in it. So I'm definitely looking forward to AUMA, which is coming up later in the week. But like I said last week, that was all that I had the pleasure of attending. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dunham. Councillor Wing.
Thank you, Mayor Barkley. I had the opportunity last Wednesday to attend a board meeting and a new director welcome event for the Chamber of Commerce in Innisfail. I've been appointed to that board. So I met most of the board, just about everyone was there. Many of the group are newly elected at their AGM just last month. And some of them, of course, have been on the board for a while. So Blaine Staples is the new board chair at the Chamber. Blaine is one of the partners of the Jungle Farm out in the county. So that's a very positive appointment, I believe. And other directors include Rashan Butts from the Day Home Society, Dean Turnquist from Summit Psychology, and Dean is actually the vice president of the group now. Lee Eddy from Blue Rock Nutrition. Heather Cooper is new to the board from Johns Manville. Mikkel Soderberg, who is a local accountant. Lindsay Forget from Royal LePage Network Realty. Pat Bourne from Insight Coaching and Consulting is also brand new. And Dana DePalm has been appointed from Red Deer County Council again this year. So I think I'm very encouraged by the group. I'm very encouraged by the conversation and the meeting that we had. Just a couple of business items that we dealt with, and the conversation was good. So I think we've got good opportunities to be able to move forward as we work with the Chamber, and we see the Chamber growing in Innisfail. And then also I attended the Royal Canadian Legion Remembrance Day ceremony at the Cenotaph. Joining members, also members and veterans in the club room after the event. Yeah, I'm a daughter and a daughter-in-law of World War II vets. And so November 11th is an important day for my family. So it was a privilege to represent town. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor.
Okay, so last week I attended my first Mountain View Regional Water Services Commission meeting, and was reminded by them as they introduced themselves that it's a separate duty from council to be on that commission. They're big. They have $300 million worth of assets as per the discussion we just had about our total assets. Of course, a lot of them are underground, the water plant down here. They elected Lance Colby as chair. He's the current mayor of Carstairs, and Rob Stewart, vice chair, current mayor of Bowden. Apparently a few months ago, they brought in a new operations director, Rick Blair, and I think he's just been amazing what he's doing there in drilling down and getting into their past and looking at their assets and asset management and identifying that they're not putting away enough money at this point in time. A few other little highlights. They are going to have a budget meeting on November 29th. They are going to issue an estimate for those of us who are having budget discussions ahead of the 29th as to what to expect. They're being told by their suppliers and even right down to the benefits of their people to expect a 10 to 15% increase in their own operations costs. They do recognize their need to increase reserves. One of the examples they gave of old equipment, their electrical switch gear is primarily 30 odd years old. So they'll be replacing quite a bit of that in the next while in a planned way. Other than that, I did attend Remembrance Day, and it was a great day. We were lucky there was no wind, and yeah, it was well done. No MPC this week, and off to the AUMA convention, and the Christmas tree event on Friday. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Hystad.
Your worship, thanks. I had the opportunity to go to Remembrance Day with many of you. It was a very nice ceremony, and it was nice just meeting up with you a couple hours later at the club room. I guess I did get a couple emails from people that were in the gallery earlier today, so I'll forward those on to everybody just so that we're aware. I want to recognize you for your leadership today, being very calm and open to allowing the guests to speak. So I appreciate that, your worship. That was very good of you. I guess my comments, when you have a delegation come in, and I know that we have our process in place. I think that we try to do our best with that. And I hope that when I reacted, when the gentleman was making comments, I think I was respectful at that time, but I think that when it's our turn to speak, I think it's the delegation should listen. And that's why I spoke the way I did. I just want to be very upfront with my colleagues here. And as to the ministerial order, that's law. I'm not going to break the law. And as to meeting with our delegations or our citizens, I think that we're all open for that. I know that this team is, and previous teams have been. So I think that, it was a lot to take in for myself, and I tried to, the asset management stuff was really cool today. I think it'll be really good for budget. But for me, it was, a lot to take in. I guess we'll move on, but those are my comments today. Thanks, your worship.
Thank you. Councillor Harrison.
Thank you, Mayor Barkley. I also attended the Remembrance Day celebrations at the Legion on Thursday, November the 11th. And yes, it was quite an honor to see the vets that were there and the people that attended. I too agree with the delegations are our constituents, and they need to be heard. And I would support more discussion and around. And don't get me wrong, I'm certainly not professing or agreeing to breaking any law at all. And I've said that all along. And in the discussion that I had with Delegate Reimer earlier this fall, I made that very clear that we cannot break an order. And I had a whole dissertation about that, but time is of the essence. So I leave that. And I also like to congratulate Mayor Barkley on the way it unfolded. It was very, very professional. And those kind of discussions are very hard, particularly when you're only 3 weeks into a term. And when you get served papers for legal liability, it's not a pleasant thing. So we'll persevere, we'll move on. And I certainly hope that we can have a meaningful, respectful discussion around what they were proposing. They did ask 2 questions, and I think those are 2 questions that are fairly easily answered. And I think that the delegations deserve a reply, whether it be, thank you for your presentation, we're done with it, or further discussions or whatever. I think that's just the honorable thing and the professional thing to do as a council. So I thank you, Mayor Barkley.
Thank you. And Councillor Harris, Ms. Sarah.
Thank you, Mayor Barkley. Well, I also went to the Remembrance Day ceremonies. And other than that, the week was a little bit quiet. I appreciate, sorry. Maybe I'll just stop there.
Let us in on the joke.
No, that was very unprofessional, and I'm sorry. I would like to comment on Councillor Hystad's comments to you, and I I second those and I appreciate the way you handled things today. I mean, I'm still not 100% sure what, what kind of response to have in cases like that. So I'm just kind of listening and learning. I had, it was a bad day in terms of listening to the delegation. Just for personal reasons today, one of my own staff members had to quit because her son is a 3-year-old boy who has long COVID, and he's suffering with lesions all over his body, and he's just been diagnosed with epilepsy. And it turns out that his brain has not had a break. It's been active for 18 months straight, and she's just had to quit her job with me. And so I think, the historical words that they bring up and the connotations that they give to them regarding discrimination and segregation, I think they're improperly used. And I didn't know if I should share that story today, but it was difficult listening to, some of the, ways of describing their own, how they feel discriminated against, given, some of the other things that are going on in the world. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Maceros. And so this past week, attended the Remembrance Day ceremonies, laid a wreath on behalf of the town. And I think former Councillor Rehberger probably had a good sale day for Legion memberships among councillors. So I'm sure he'll be coming in to thank us for that. And I've had some meetings this week. Todd and I met with a developer this past week and had some individual meetings. Like I said, I did meet with Delegate Reimer last week and, suggested that they need to take this up with the provincial government. And there's not a lot we can do here. And I think going back to what Councillor Maceros said, we've been listening to this for many months now, and I'm not sure what we can do. I'm certainly not prepared to start advocating to the province to loosen up restrictions when we still have hospitals and ICU capacity where it is. And also many people, thousands of people have had surgeries canceled, whether it's cancer surgeries or other kinds of surgeries. And, we need to look at this as the wellness of our community as a whole. And for, the voices we hear today, there's, voices on the other side too. And it's a very wide spectrum, right? We've got one end that would like everything to just open it up and forget everything. And we've got, the other end of that spectrum where we have people in our community that are almost afraid to leave their house because they have compromised immune systems. And I think our administration has done a wonderful job in allowing access in our facilities to as many people as possible. We know how important recreation is. And I think where we were last year at this time, I don't believe the facilities were even open. So here that we are open, most of the programs are full. I'm going to Legion Club Room in the afternoon, and the place was full of people. It was the first time they'd had a live music in there for, I think, since early 2020. So, I know they're frustrated with what's going on, but like I said, I'm not sure there's a lot we can do about it at this level of government. And thank you for the nice comments today. You're only as good as the team that's around you. And I know we've just got an awesome team here, and that includes council and administration. So with that, I guess we will carry on. Anybody else have anything they want to add? Yes, would you like to speak into the
Good afternoon, Mayor Barclay and councillors. So my name is Arno Glover. I'm a resident of the town of Innisfail. I'd like to thank council today for allowing both delegations and the other individual to express their views today. That's really important. I'm pretty sure I was a minority in the room today, but I think my views and opinions represent the majority of people in this town. I welcome open debate. I welcome free speech. And I welcome the right to have an opinion. And in these times, that's sometimes very difficult to have that or do that. So thank you for hearing those delegations. I also like to remind council that no one in this room, either individually or collectively, is above the law. No one in this town, individually or collectively, is above the law. I also might like to remind council that as a municipality, you can add to provincial law, but you can't take away from provincial law. I understand that the delegations today wanted to set up a work group to discuss their interpretation or their way of maybe picking holes in the REP program. I don't believe that there is any scope or merit in that exercise. I do believe that we should reply to the questions that were posed to council, but I don't believe it's good time for council to work with a group that are clearly intent on not adhering to the letter of the law. So thank you to those councillors here today that have already expressed the fact that they will not break the law. And I think that in itself represents the majority of the wishes of the town of Innisfail and not a minority group. So thank you. I would also like to say that this town shouldn't spend any more money, $28,000, on pursuing a program to remove an ex-councillor on the basis of his misunderstanding of municipal law. And if that person can't understand municipal law, then he has no right to question provincial law. Again, that's my view. It's a personal view, but I'd like to thank council for adhering to or agreeing or stating that they will adhere to the letter of the law. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Glover. And I think during the campaign, that question was asked many, many times, and we all answered it. And I think October 18th, the community spoke on what they wanted to see. So, but you know, we should listen to our constituents without question, and we did today. So thank you. Anyone else have anything? Okay, so with that, I'll ask for a motion to go in camera, please. Councillor Highstand.
I'll make a motion to go in camera.
Okay, all in favor? Right, thank you. Thanks, everybody, for coming.